Welcome to Beacon of Creation, a weekly podcast on game design through the lens of Magic the Gathering. I'm Tim.
And I'm Daniel, aka thesixthroc.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you back on the pod. We had you around a couple years ago. We were talking about Kamigawa back then. We're going to be talking about Kamigawa now. You had sent me like a little teaser for an episode idea. You started with the Kamigawa cube that we talked about back then, to Sharpie errata, to custom cards, straight up custom cards, and then back to just errata stickers. So I want to hear a little bit about that. Kamigawa, an old set, a lot of the cards are like kind of clunky or maybe not, maybe too weird to play, but the flavor's there, the pieces are there, the mechanics are novel. What were you thinking here?
Yeah, so the first podcast we did was about Kamigawa cubes in general.
Yeah.
Having been drilling into this one small area of design for quite a while, my Magic hobby, I can report back some sort of general lessons for Magic design.
Yeah.
But that story of the errata, one of the ways I like to use this cube is in sort of a closed system, like sealed environment. So this is if you happen to be anywhere with like 20 gamers in like, say, a forest cabin for a week where you're all trapped there together.
Yeah.
And especially because I like actually playing sealed, even though I'm a draft nerd. But you can give everybody some cards and take them away, and then they can go and like arrange them in their room at night and bring them back and do it kind of intensely. I've done that like 4 or 5 times, and one of my friends was like, "Well, by this point, if you know the cards this well, you might as well just fix some of the cards that could be, you know how to change them. You could do it with a Sharpie." I was like, "Oh, all right." So we moved into this phase of writing up lists of things we could do to scribble on the cards, make them better. Once you sort of cross the Rubicon, there's a lot of you don't know how far to go exactly, right? So like, should half the cards be Sharpied up? Would that look silly?
Yeah.
At some point, I was just making enough errata. I thought, okay, just make these into custom cards. By this point, they're going to look very visually complex if you're writing all over them.
Yeah.
There is something nice to the explanation of saying to people IRL, like, "Hey, do you want to play Magic?" And then, "Oh yeah, there's some additions to the cards. We've written on some of them." And there's a higher activation energy to do a fully custom card thing IRL. Sometimes it depends on your context. So I realized we could go back to like errata stickers. This is what I should have done the first time, but just have little address label stickers. You can stick them on, easier to iterate, take them off.
They're nice and clear. You don't have handwriting problems.
Yeah. And what really made me happy with this change was I like to use Cube Cobra. So you can find the cube we're talking about today.
Yeah.
I like to call it environment.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If you look at Cube Cobra and use the search functionality, search for Kamigawa, you'll find it. But on the visual spoiler, you can see the errata too. So they actually let you use images on Cube Cobra.
Yeah.
So I have a master list of errata here on my computer. I wrote this script. You press a button, and then it goes to update all the images in the cube automatically. So, yeah. So it's an alternative way of managing custom stuff apart from page
yeah.
The goal here is really to take an environment from the past. This is 20 years ago, 2004, like lift it into the modern day. You want it to be just like weird like it is and explore the weird things that it's exploring, but have the gameplay be a bit better, bring in some of the things we've learned over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And that's the goal.
Yeah. Not take away some of the cool parts, but just provide enough support that like color pairs each feel okay,
Yeah, absolutely. I like weird, so if I can make the weird thing you can do in the draft, possible and playable and limited, that's fantastic.
So just to get some kind of parameters out here for people, this isn't like a singleton environment. You got multiples of some cards, right?
Yep. I think if you're replicating an order limited format, you would want to do this.
Yeah.
We have 4 of each common, 2 of each uncommon, 1 of each rare. With an asterisk, I'll say in a moment. But if you're trying to replicate an environment, it's nice. People don't know about your cube. If they see it, it's nice to say, "Hey, look at the rarity symbol," and that's how common it actually is in the cube. Plus, rarity is really important, not for controlling the size of things and the prevalence of things in the environment.
Yeah, it also makes it so like the second and third packs of the draft might not be quite so overwhelming because you've already seen a good chunk of the cards. If you're building a seal pool, you'll have a bunch of multiples versus having to read every single card with a singleton cube.
Yeah. And that asterisk is I have recently had a something I'm calling super common. So there's one card of each color,
Oh, okay.
which is a six of.
Yeah.
Part of this is just like Glacial Ray is just such a good example of Kamigawa that we want six of them. That's probably a good time for us to actually read about the basics of Kamigawa from a mechanical standpoint, game design standpoint. We said we could read some cards.
Yeah, let's do it.
And this is a good one to go for. So Glacial Ray is one of those cards people remember from this block. This card is 2 mana, one of which is red. It's an instant card with an arcane subtype. It says Glacial Ray deals 2 damage to target creature or player, and it has Splice onto Arcane for 1 and a red. So this is a world of spirits. The spirit world and the mortal world show up in this block, and the spirit world can kind of combine onto itself as more things splice onto each other. So the idea here is if you cast an arcane spell, then you can reveal another card from your hand with Splice onto Arcane and pay the Splice cost as an additional cost to that spell. And if you do, then the card's effects of the Splice spell appear on the spell you're casting. You just add that text to the text box.
So as an example, I have just 2 Glacial Rays in my hand. I can cast one and reveal the second, and we get the effect of the second one without using up the card, which, is some pretty good value in the case of Glacial Ray itself.
That's right. Yeah. If you have just 2 Glacial Rays, you could take down a 6 toughness creature.
Yeah.
Cast the first, splice the second on, and then splice the second. 6 mana total.
Yeah. And if you can find a couple other arcane spells, they don't even have to be splice spells themselves. They just have to be arcane. You can keep reusing the same splice card, the same Glacial Ray, and tag it onto every arcane spell you cast if you have enough mana.
Right. And so just as you can keep playing your arcane effects over and over, there's a mechanic called Soul Shift. So Soul Shift appears on spirits, and an example card would be Thousand-Legged Kami. This is 8 mana, 2 of which is green for a 6/6. It's a creature spirit, and it has Soul Shift 7. When this creature dies, you may return target spirit card with mana value 7 or less from your graveyard to your hand. So with this mechanic, you could play the same spirit over and over again. You could even make a tower of, so your 5 mana spirit dies. Those 5 mana spirits tend to have Soul Shift 4, so you bring back one of your earlier spirits. Then your 6 mana spirit dies, you bring back your 5 mana spirit, and when that dies, you get your 4 mana again. And that's a strategy in black-green where you play these really quite mediocre creatures, but the game is really long. It's a very slow strategy. You can overwhelm your opponent.
If you're building the deck, if you have the synergy set up, it's sort of like they all have dies, draw a card. I don't know, any creature that's big and is trading for a bunch of things and then dying and drawing you a card, that's a decent deal.
That's right, or at least it was in 2004.
Yeah. I guess nowadays it might not be quite as good because a lot of cards kind of 2 for 1. But
yeah,
those are hard to get in this environment. Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to do with this podcast was to explain sort of the most interesting game design aspects of various parts of Kamigawa. So in this case, these 2 mechanics, when you're building a deck, in sealed or draft, especially sealed, all the spirit cards want to be played with other spirit creature cards. There's Soul Shift and some spirits that trigger when you play other spirits, when you play arcane spells. Arcane, splice onto arcane, of course, requires you to have more arcane spells. So these are like agglutinative mechanics that want more and more of themselves. You've got your deck that you're building, and maybe you've got some humans in it, but you add a few spirits, and then they keep telling you to add more spirits. And it's like, how much do you want to resist the pull to make your entire deck spirit and arcane based? That's one of the central choices in the deck building. The other distinctive features of Champions of Kamigawa block, I would say, are the very long games. So by making this,
that's fair.
So by making this Soul Shift mechanic, the game has to be long if it's going to if that slow value of mediocre creatures is going to mean anything. So sometimes you didn't have a way to break the board stall; it would just go forever, which they would not like to do nowadays. The White Honden, the White Shrine, is another card they never make nowadays, where it says at the beginning of your upkeep, you gain 2 life for each shrine you control. So this really, there could be, if your opponent's trying to gradually deal damage, like with a drain deck, then there's no end to this thing to one of your decks, maybe. There's another theme in this block to do with like, mana value matters. Part of looking at old blocks and bringing them to life is doing the archaeology of how blocks got the way they are.
Yeah.
I think what happened with Champions was probably, if I had to guess, that they were designing a mana value matters block and change direction, if I had to guess. You find sort of, it's like been grafted. There's only a few remaining places where you can really see how the mana value matters theme is there. There's like a cycle of Kirin. The spells with no mana value, which was, I think they did that for the first time in Kamigawa block. I'll read an example. So the spell Evermind has no mana cost. It's an instant arcane. It says Evermind is blue. We didn't have color indicators yet.
Yeah.
It says draw a card, and it has splice onto arcane for 1 and a blue. So this arcane spell can only be spliced. That's one way to make a spell with no mana value.
Yeah.
The block has lots of really big spells. So just like with Splice, how you'd sometimes need to put a lot of effects together and you want to play 3 cards from your hand with adding a bunch of costs and it costs 8 mana. This is playing in the mana value space matters a little bit, but it's sort of a hidden theme in the block, interestingly. I think they like switched direction to a legendary matters theme.
Maybe wisely, yeah.
And so I really enjoyed, building theories about this and then exploring those subtle themes a bit more.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at the search here, and looks like maybe there's 26 cards that have mana value in their text, not including Soul Shift, which are all cards that mention mana value as well. Like we've got the Kirin cycle, which care about mana value. This like destroy an artifact, but only if its mana value is less than something. Return something, but only if its mana value is less. Control a creature, mana value, blah, blah, blah. And then people might know from Modern the shoals, which are like kind of pitch spells that care about mana value, and a couple other pieces like that.
Right. Mana value is also connected to this this theme that is more explicit in Champions of Kamigawa of hand size matters.
Yeah.
It wasn't an entirely successful theme in Kamigawa, but there's several attempts to. So, for example, with the shells, because you can pitch cards from your hand instead of paying costs, that gives you a benefit of having big hands.
Yeah.
Hand size matters, aka wisdom, was the theme of the third set, Saviors. This was they used to do these sharp left turns back in the day where, because people had already seen the block quite a lot, you had to go really loud with the theme on the third set to make it visible. Not all those themes are successful, but you can kind of see how hand size matters relates to mana value, which relates to you want to have a big hand to do your arcane towers and your Soul Shift towers. So when you're making your own version of this set, you want to dive in and think, what are the most interesting themes? What are the most engaging themes? Where are the misses? Where are the wins? And try to lean into what the block was going for.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're redeeming hand size matters? Do you feel like you've gotten something going?
I think if you were to look at how hand size matters was executed, you could probably identify like 3 or 4 cards which were really interesting and really successful applications of the idea.
Yeah, I'm asking because like we've got cards that you can see what they were trying to do, but I don't know that anyone ever did this. Like Scroll of Origins. It's an artifact where you pay 2 and tap. Draw a card if you have 7 or more cards in hand. Ivory Crane Netsuke. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 7 or more cards in hand, you gain 4 life. These are effects that I'm pretty skeptical of. You have maybe more of a push or pull of like Okina Nightwatch, a big creature. As long as you have more cards in hand than your opponent, it gets +3/+3.
One of the cards in the third set is Death of 1,000 Stings. 5 mana, one of which is black. It's an instant arcane. Target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Okay, not very much for 5 mana. It does say at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have more cards in hand than each opponent, you may return Death of 1,000 Stings from your graveyard to your hand.
Oh, I remember reading this and be like, please just make it 2 mana and I'll try it out.
Oh yeah, it has this gameplay problem where you have to remember to check your hand size. It's in your graveyard, right? So hopefully you've sticking out of your graveyard to remember, but it's very easy to forget. And then
oh, that's true. Upkeep trigger in graveyard is maybe not the space we want to play in.
Yeah.
There were like a cycle of legendary Maros, Sora Maro. There are a couple others, Kage Maro. It's a little hard to search exactly about hand size, but I'm gonna guess probably 30 cards, maybe 20, that care about the size of your hand or the relative size of your hand of your opponent. Something that's maybe more limited appropriate. But even then, that is like subject to a lot of like real problems in gameplay. Like if your opponent mulligans, now they're extra punished because this set cares about relative hand size. So I've mulliganed, and not only am I down a card, but also all my opponent's cards now work for the rest of the game.
Yes.
Or just the turn order, stuff like that can be kind of awkward.
Yes, I like a couple of them, like I said.
Yeah.
So Okina Nightwatch, 5 mana, one of which is green for a 4/3 human monk.
Okay.
It has, as long as you have more cards in hand than each opponent, Okina Nightwatch gets +3/+3. You know, when there's cards on the field, both players are watching it, and so the instance of that brain power, it's a little bit nicer to have its stats be changing than have it gaining flying or not. It's just a little bit easier to track.
Okay. Yeah. There might be like a cycle of these, a common.
Yeah,
Then maybe
that's
you
right.
want to pull a couple of those in. Yeah.
That's right.
Now that we got kind of a sense of like what Kamigawa was, we've got Splice, we've got, these kind of like interesting mechanics that we might not see ever again in a big way. You've got a lot of raw material to work with. So from there, you're sort of thinking about like, what can I do with this? What kind of environment do I want? How much of this craziness can I feature?
Yes, when you're designing games, it pays to think about the specific audience that's going to see that. And the constraints that you're operating under are very different to the ones that Wizards had when they made this environment in 2004. So
yeah,
sometimes if you're playing just with the advanced players, you can raise the complexity a lot.
Yeah.
I do like to play it with beginning players too, so I was interested in keeping comprehension complexity pretty low. Some vanillas is okay, and having the lenticular complexity that you can't see just when you read the card, but it comes out in gameplay.
Yeah.
I realized that for Kamigawa, because the themes are very strong and there's not much crisscrossing between them. So, for example, they had every samurai has Bushido, every ninja has ninjutsu. Many themes are just limited to one color. There's not much crossing between creature types. So all the distinct green, and there aren't any cards that have like both Bushido and Soul Shift and sort of would move you between lanes in a draft environment.
Yeah, you'd probably see that now, yeah.
Yeah, I can completely ignore Constructed. I'm not playing that. It's very hard for them to do. This is one of the oldest sets in the modern border, so creatures were still very small by the time of Champions Kamigawa. And so taking it way back to when creatures were quite small gives you these natural long games due to the higher effective life totals.
Yeah.
There's a few ways the design that I made is used. I play it in person in these closed play environments. I play sealed with just 2 people. People glance and see your design. Some people go very deep reading it online, and then sometimes you talk about it on podcasts. So what is the most fun thing to do? I was happy to include cards with unspecified rules behavior. A previous card, I don't think I have it in this edition, but if you put Splice into Arcane on a creature, what happens exactly? I haven't read the comprehensive rules in that manner to discover exactly what would happen, and I kind of want to avoid it. Maybe I will learn exactly what the implications of that are, but I'm fine with us figuring that in the game, out in the game on the fly, right?
Maybe that's the magic as Garfield intended. The rules are a part of the exploration of the game.
Yes, that's right. It was really tournament play that forced Wizards to change from that direction.
Yeah.
And finally, I do use some house rules. So I'm a limited aficionado. I play minimum deck size 36.
Oh,
I think it is. I think it is just a better game.
Yeah.
If you turn up the frequency that each card in your deck appears by 10%.
Oh, okay.
This means that you can have 2 card combos that are meaningful. So you find one card in a draft, you can find a second card that works with it, and that extra 10% really helps in letting them connect. As well as if you have a specific rare that you like that you're drafting around. I mean, when I started playing Magic, I went to a pre-release and I got a rare and I played the entire tournament and I never saw my rare once.
Awful.
But of course, 36 is not a round number, so how could a wizard possibly tell everybody that?
Yeah, I've never heard this 36 size before.
Yeah,
This is new to me.
yeah.
This is an interesting technology. Also powers up dampen thought, the
Yes,
one of the sideways things that people always want to do in Kamigawa, but it's maybe a little difficult. It's a mill card with splice.
I'll read Dampen Thought.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is classic Kamigawa card once more.
yeah.
This is 2 mana, one of which is blue for an instant arcane. Target player mills 4 cards with
Hmm.
splice onto arcane, 1 and a blue.
All right, I get one free cast in this environment because we're starting at 36. You kind of mentioned briefly, but I actually want to talk a little bit about this of maybe preferring sealed in formats that don't have that kind of like crossover synergy.
Mhm.
I have actually noticed playing. I have a Kamigawa block cube as well, and I have noticed that like the drafts can sometimes be unsatisfying because some of the color pairs like do feel pretty synergistic, but a lot of them aren't. People are used to that charge after a draft where they feel like they have like their deck is like really strongly in like one big theme and it's going to be really cool. And when they don't get any of that after a draft, they maybe feel a little disappointed. Whereas with a sealed pool, you're just looking at your cards and you're putting that optimization hat on and you're trying to figure out exactly what you're going to do with these cards. And like how synergistic or not is now a choice that you're making rather than something that the draft did to you. So I could actually believe that a setup like this would actually be pretty fun sealed.
Yeah, I don't usually enjoy playing much sealed, to be honest. I love
Yeah.
draft. Magic Arenas, it's a whole
Yeah.
new world of limited quality. But it's good to know with the format you're trying to revive and bring into the present, what its unique features are like that. I think Kamigawa Block, they just didn't know how to make draft environments as well back then, so they did these other
Yeah.
weird things that happened to work for sealed.
Yeah. And if you are dealing with things like a splice, I think is an example of that, where if you already know splice really well, yeah, you know how you're trying to get like 14, 15 splice cards if you can. But if you're just trying a draft out for the first time, people never pull off splice in their first draft of Kamigawa Cube. It just never happens. Whereas with sealed, now you have time. You can look across, well, I've got 3 colors where I can get up to a good number of splice.
Yes.
And now I can actually make this happen. But I have time to figure that out. I have time to learn that about this block.
Yes, some AB mechanics are fun in draft because you get one card and then you're looking for the others.
Mm-hmm.
But in some cases, when the way that the cards interact is not necessarily obvious ahead of time, or there's sort of multi-card like 4 cards do interesting things together,
Yeah.
then you can land in a situation in sealed where you have it, even though it might be hard to draft into.
Yeah, yeah. And between rounds, like that's kind of a classic sealed thing. Oh, I wish I had more of these splice cards. Oh, even bad arcane cards are actually really useful in my splice deck. If they're 1 mana, it doesn't matter what they do. I just want to splice onto them. And oh, I can change my deck around. I have access to those cards rather than, the draft portion being done and, I can't get those cards back.
Right. We could probably do a whole other podcast on this closed play system. There's a few extra things there, so you don't need to stop with the sealed pool you were given at the start. So you can hand out more cards on day 3.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
You can. I think you should play for ante if you're doing this, so you get some cards moving around, just like Richard intended.
Very beautiful. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I might finish my list of the house rules. There's 2 more.
Oh yeah, yeah.
One is 3 mulligans on 0, 1, or 6 or 7 lands in your hand.
Classic. Yeah.
What do you think about this, Tim?
That's I can't cite anything. That's what me and all my friends when I was a kid thought the actual rules were. I couldn't tell you if those things were ever real.
And then for this block as well, in particular, no max hand sizes. Highly recommended. Doesn't punish your flood just as much, but if you want to be, playing these cards that say if you have 7 or more cards in hand, then kind of a problem if you have to discard them as soon as you go anything above that.
Yeah, what I'm imagining doing then, or what I'm hoping that I'm doing, is I'm blue. I'm playing with all the Moonfolk because the Moonfolk. I'll just read 1 or 2 of them just to give people a taste. So, Soratami Cloud Skater. This is 1 and a blue for a 1/1 creature. Moonfolk Rogue. It has flying, so 2 mana 1/1 flyer, and has 2 mana. Return a land you control to its owner's hand. Draw a card, then discard a card. Now, the draw card, discard a card. That's just kind of a normal effect. But the thing that's common among all Moonfolk Is this like pay a little bit of mana and then return a land, or return 2 lands, or return 3 lands to your hand to get some sort of effect? So it's kind of repeatable. You could potentially you could activate this Cloud Skater or some of the other ones like multiple times in the turn if you're heading into the late game and you have a lot of lands in play. But if you are trying to do this aggressively, you're now also going to go over hand size limit, and now you're discarding cards just for using all your Moonfolk here.
That's right. This is a very exciting, spiky ability.
Spiky, yeah.
Works really well in with cards that put lands into play from your hand. So that's secretly the blue-green archetype. People always wonder about blue-green archetypes in Limited and try and find them. This is a pretty interesting one.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, like a Sakura Tribe Scout. 1 mana, 1/1, tap, put a land from your hand into play. I guess, yeah, if you you can have more than 1 land drop a turn for your Cloud Skater, for your other Soratami, your other Moonfolk. Yeah, that seems fun.
Yep, that's where Azusa comes from.
Yeah.
All the land fixing in the set puts lands into your hand instead of putting it directly into play, except Kadama's Reach, I suppose, does put one into play.
Yeah. So we're getting close to the real juicy part of this pod, which is going to be talking about the errata choices that you made, because there's a lot of things going on in there. One last thing to kind of set the table here is that you've actually got cards not from Kamigawa block in here. I'm not quite sure how many you have. Maybe 5 or 10% is what my guess would be, just looking at it. But you've got gold cards because of that. You've got even just kind of curve filling choices here.
Yes.
Are there a couple that jump out that were memorable or that were choices for you?
Yeah, the inclusion of cards off the plane.
Mm-hmm.
Again, when you're bringing an environment into the present, sometimes you don't have some of the things that we expect nowadays. Kamigawa had only 2 multicolor cards in the block. They had this theory that you wanted to starve players of some things so you could bring it back later. So that's one reason why you'd have cards from outside the block exactly. You can interpret some cards as reprints. So you could imagine, look at the art and does it fit the theme? But sometimes you just really have a gap in the cube and you need to fill it. There's no card that can, if you want a high quality limited environment, there's no way just to make that with the existing stuff. You could just go the direction of only using errata. This cube's history, it was about 30% of cards that were not directly printed on the plane originally, which is probably around the upper bound of what I would say is you're doing an authentic block cube. You have cards from elsewhere. But this number's decreased when the errata is turned on. I'll give a few examples just to answer your question of cards that are off-plane reprints, if you like. So Gluttonous Slug from Modern Horizons is 2 mana, one of which is black, 0/3 creature, Slug Horror, with Menace and Evolve, which is whenever a creature ETBs, if that creature has greater power or toughness than this creature, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. This inclusion, and it's now a spirit, by the way, so it does have the errata on it.
Ooh, a little tease for errata, yeah.
Yeah, there's an identity crisis of the White Samurai in this block. What are they doing? They have Bushido, but it's not clear what the game plan is. Beyond the fact that Bushido is a bit better on defense than offense, because it only activates on offense if your opponent blocks. So double blocking this the slug with Bushido creatures is quite fun.
Oh, okay.
It's got low power, so maybe it won't be able to kill one of them, or it'll only kill one. And the samurai needs something to do, so this slug's part of that in black. Similarly, Gaze of Justice. This is a 1 mana white sorcery. As an additional cost to play Gaze of Justice, tap 3 and tap white creatures you control. Exile target creature, and it has flashback for 5 and a white. So these are cornerstones of when you're taking an old format and you want to decide how is my version going to be different than other people's. Sometimes you can carve out, you can nail yourself to particular choices like this. As you mentioned on the last episode, I don't have Ninja of the Deep Powers, this ninja that draws you cards that looks like a really obvious include. So there's a few like flagpole decisions like that.
Yeah, Gaze of Justice. I guess this is pushing me away from wanting to include a splice package because I want to have a lot of creatures. I need to tap 3 untapped white creatures I control. So I need to have, 17, 18, 19, or I guess it might be different in 36 card land, but I want to have, high teens of creatures so that I can make sure, and I want to play a lot of white creatures so I can make sure I can cast the spell. And it has flashback, so I want to, I really, really, really want to maintain a big board. I want to have 3, 4, or 5 creatures whenever I can.
Yes, you want difficult, agonizing decisions, pulling in different directions, ideally.
There we go. That's very old school. Yeah, my deck will be broken if I don't think hard enough.
So, what is the principles of errata in cards from an old format?
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on this, Tim?
I don't have a lot of experience errataing. I've usually gone more for like an off-plane reprint, like you're talking about, or just some custom cards. I think if for errata,
I think with errata, there's a cost to people looking at your card and it has a sticker on it.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a clean print, and perhaps it's not an authentic Magic card if you care about that.
Yeah.
But errata is really important to take some old cards and some old environments and make them, well, they were really meant to be. So for me, the gold standard is like the card feels more like itself with the errata than it did before.
Yeah.
One example of this would be the snakes in the set. Many of them have an ability that is venom flavored. So, for example, Orochi Ranger, 2 mana, one of which is green for a 2/1 creature Snake Warrior. This reads, whenever Orochi Ranger deals combat damage to this is the original card, by the way. Whenever Orochi Ranger deals combat damage to a creature, tap that creature and it doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So it's not obvious this is venom flavored, perhaps, but this ability, now we have this, now we have stun counters, so that allows you to do something we couldn't do back then, which is to keep it tapped for 2 turns.
Oh, okay, yeah. That makes sense, yeah, because the original, a lot of this Orochi, like, stun ability, this Venom ability, was pretty low impact, except for on, like, really good blockers. So for this, like, Orochi Ranger here, this 2/1 for 2, stunning something for 1 turn wasn't a great deal. Like, I'm not going to chump attack to try to stun my opponent's creature just for a turn. But if I get 2 turns out of it, actually, maybe that starts to be tempting. I can attack with a bunch of creatures. One of them is this ranger who's hopelessly outclassed, but gets blocked by a big thing, or my opponent thinks about blocking a big thing, but then they'll lose it for 2 more turns, and maybe they don't want to do that. And now this ranger can either get in or trade rather than being just eaten.
That's right. So it was pretty insubstantial, almost trinket text, and now it's really part of the meaning of that card. It engages with the long game thing that's going on in Kamigawa. So your creatures, even after it dies, can stretch 2 turns into the future. And so just to be precise, the errata is that it taps and gives 2 stun counters to the creature when it deals combat damage. Another example of an errata is the 1,000-legged Kami I mentioned earlier. We now realize that big green creatures, you often want them to, their job is to hold the fort because you've been waiting for them. If you're paying an 8 mana or 7 mana green creature, it needs to come down, and there's this innovation in Honey Mammoth and Ikoria.
Oh, yeah.
To have it gain life when it enters.
Yeah.
1,000-legged Kami, though, if you look at the art, I think it's a lot more fun to give that reach. It is, if you look at the card, it's
gigantic, yeah.
Reaching into the air with its thousands of legs. So just adding reach to that card, it's a pretty elegant fix.
Yeah. One of the things to kind of remember about Soul Shift is it's kind of like the dream of Cascade, where part of the reason why I put a 6 mana do almost nothing Cascade spell is that I'm hoping to also hit a 4 mana Cascade and a 3 mana Cascade on the way down. And that's why I'm trying to stretch my mana to cast an expensive spell. With some of these gigantic Soul Shift creatures, do I want to put a 7 mana or an 8 mana common in my deck? Probably not. Like, normal deck building says don't bother putting maybe like an 8 mana rare because it's going to be gigantic. It's going to have a massive effect. But a common or an uncommon, that can be a little bit of a harder pitch. So the choice here with this 1,000-legged Kami, it's an 8 mana 6/6 that's going to start a gigantic Soul Shift chain if you can actually get it in play and get it killed. But how do you get it killed? How do you make sure you don't get killed? Well, let's give it reach. Let's make sure that at least it can throw a block.
Exactly. If people want to try and make this tower of Soul Shift creatures, let's help them out on that plan. Make it. It's okay to punish people for doing some crazy stuff, but if that stuff is central to the color pair, then it needs a little bit more support than it was given.
Yeah, and I don't think even in a Soul Shift deck dedicated Soul Shift deck, I would ever play the Thousand-Legged Kami.
Yeah.
But now with Reach, now I can dream a little bit. Now I can, steeple my fingers and have like a master plan and dream a little bit.
It is still just a 6/6 for 8 with reach
Yeah.
and ability, so it's
Yeah.
not easy to play this.
Yeah.
One point about errata generally, the way that the cards appear on Cube Cobra is you actually see all the original text box, and then you see the errata and a little sticker above it.
Yeah.
Of course, in person, sometimes I am using stickers over the existing text, so it replaces what you see there. But the nature of an errata card is you have the original card in context, and then you see, oh, here's the change that we've made to it.
Yeah.
And again, the constraints that your game is under, if I'm playing this IRL with friends, often the thing they're more interested in is what was my decision? What did I decide to do? Why did I do that? So showing the original context, keeping as much of that as possible is helpful.
I have seen like in cubes with errata with stickers and stuff like that. There is often the question of like, what did this do originally? I don't remember.
Yep.
It's like maybe a more famous card than a Kamigawa common. Maybe it's something, a little more pronounced. But even then, it's like, did it used to give -3? Did it used to give -4? I don't even remember.
Yes, you want to keep the essence of the original card and be as restrained as possible. Just adding a single keyword is a great way to fix it up.
Yeah. I think there's maybe a little bit of extra readiness. I don't know if it actually ends up mattering, but I'm looking at like a card here, just as an example, Psychic Spear, one of your errata cards, black mana, and then it has, like a 15-word sentence, both as its original text and as the errata. If I'm looking at this here, if I'm in the middle of a draft, I actually kind of just want to read both, even though the original text no longer matters, for better or worse. Maybe that's slowing me down. Maybe that's actually confusing me. I don't know if it is or not. Maybe it's totally fine.
Yeah, I think I like how on Cube Cobra you can see both, and then IRL, you probably you want to just understand the card and move on because you're in a draft or you're trying to play with it immediately.
Yeah.
I actually like that example of Psychic Spear. So it's a sorcery that costs a single black. The original card said target player reveals his or her hand, choose a spirit or arcane card from it. That player discards that card. And with the errata, you can choose any non-land card for this Thoughtseize, but the player can pay 4 life instead of discarding the card.
Oh, a little Punisher. Okay.
Yeah. Any guesses why we made the change, Tim?
Well, it's very sideboardy to start with. The ability to hit a spirit or arcane card is kind of random. And then secondarily, I don't know if this is what your intention was, but if you're deploying this card out of the sideboard against an arcane deck, against a splice deck, it seems kind of brutal. Like, if you make me discard my dampened thought, then the game's over.
Yeah, I agree. So hate cards, this hates spirit and arcane, those are more important and constructed. So if we're just playing purely limited, yes, there's sort of depends how much you like sideboarding, but I'm quite happy to drop a spirit arcane card. I do like being able to see your opponent's hand once in a while in limited, so I wanted to include a card like this.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to just add Thoughtseize because if possible, you want to use cards from the original block.
Yeah.
But as a compensation for taking away for making let me start a sentence again.
You're good.
So although we've made the card stronger by allowing it to discard any non-land, we want to make it weaker. And the idea with the drawback being that the player can pay 4 life instead of discarding the card. So first of all, that's a decision, which is fun. We like those. But in this set in particular, you have these long games. You have cards built up in your hand. That's the entire point of what you're doing. Is like, I'm going to make the game last long enough that I can play my 10 mana spirit. And getting it yanked out of your hand is like a hit on that entire way of playing, which is the point of the format.
Yeah. This still feels a little bit like a marginal card to me, not like one of my, top 10 cards in my deck or anything like that. This feels like if I'm some sort of black-red, just like all-out aggressive deck, that's when that 4 life is really going to matter.
Yes.
I don't want to play this in my blue-black control deck. The opponent's just going to lose the 4 life because I'm not in danger of killing them anytime soon.
Yes, that's right. There are decks that are going to pressure your opponent's life total. You can have cards which vote for small games rather than big games, to use Sam Black's terminology. So, so cards like this make the game smaller because you both have less resources. We also have small pox in, which makes the game smaller. one really significant errata is to the epic spells. Epic is a sorcery keyword that only appears on 5 cards, cycle of rares. They would be mythics. There were no mythics back in this day.
Yeah.
And they were an attempt to design legendary spells, a version of legendary spells. They don't actually say legendary, but they have the epic ability. So the epic ability says, for the rest of the game, you can't play spells. This is old magic, At the beginning of each of your upkeeps, copy the spell except for its epic ability. An example is Endless Swarm for 8 mana, 3 of which is green for a sorcery. It says, put a 1/1 green snake creature token into play for each card in your hand, and it has epic.
Yeah.
So this is the last thing you ever do. It's the last it's the last spell you cast in the game.
Yeah.
And now your opponent knows what their mission is. It's, can I survive, let's say, 5 snakes being created every turn? The game ends with that question. So the errata is that the epic spells are arcane.
Okay. So we can splice.
You get it? Right. You can splice onto these epic spells, and that text changing ability. Oh man, I'm actually realizing as we read this that when you copy a spell that has a text changing effect on it, you copy the characteristics of a spell. So I'm pretty sure that would copy the spliced effect, though I'm not 100% sure. But let's see.
Wait, so what's the intention then? Is the intention that I would have to splice immediately, or that I have the option of splicing in future turns?
Yes, the way the epic works is that you do copy the spell.
Okay.
What I'm checking, Tim, is whether it says that you copy it and then cast it, or just copy it. So you do just copy the spell. But because you don't actually cast the copy, to my understanding, you can't then splice onto it. So the intention is that when you cast it, if you have 8 mana, you can cast Endless Swarm. If you have 10 mana, you can cast Endless Swarm with Glacial Ray spliced on.
Oh, okay. and then have that frozen in amber. Okay, yeah. Just recast that thing over and over. Okay. Oh, somehow epic spells weren't ambitious enough, so we're gonna go even higher on the ambition.
Right.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, Eternal Dominion, the blue one, which like briberies every turn. That's one that I've got in my cube that people see that in like pack 2 and they're like, is today the day? Do I want to do this? Probably not. Usually the answer is no. But the temptation, I think, is really fun for players. The epic spells have something going for them in limited, and giving them something even more to do might be more fun.
Yeah. I have had a deck which casts Eternal Dominion as a win condition, and as you said, it's bribery. So you search your opponent's library for stuff and put that permanent into play under your control. And this goes off every turn. So I did have a best of 3 game where in the sideboard, my opponent was like, okay, well, I can't have any spells in my deck that are too good, because the only way the opponent wins is if they play them. So
yeah.
It's all about those moments where, the crazy, again, the constraints that you're under. You want the craziest possible thing to happen, and in a internet, like in a global environment, maybe that thing would get repetitive or unfair or broken. But if you're playing smaller scale, you can turn the dial up a little bit higher.
Yeah. We have a couple like minor errata we can talk about, some little ones.
Yeah, any you want to query?
Yeah, I guess one of the ones that I was looking at here for these errata was on Aki Avalanchers, which is a 1-mana 1/1 goblin warrior. And then it has, the normal text of it is, sacrifice a land, Aki Avalanchers gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Play this ability only once each turn. And you've got an errata on here.
Right. So playing with this card for a while, you want it to feel more like itself. So what is Aki Avalanchers doing? It's just a 1-mana 1/1, which apparently was totally fine back in the day, but it's has the pleasure of having a second ability to blow up one of your own lands to give it +2/+0. And the art has, as you would imagine, an Aki, 2 Aki actually pushing a snowball down a hill.
Yeah.
So obviously this card should have trample. It's just a mistake.
Yeah, that's what snowballs are. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we got trample on here.
There's another small errata to Kabuto Moth, which is a famous Kamigawa card.
Oh, yeah. What's the errata here? Oh, read the original and then.
Yeah. The original is 3 mana, one of which is white for a 1/2 creature spirit with flying, and it has tap. Target creature gets +1/+2 until end of turn. The board complexity with these things around is crazy because it can save itself by going up to 4 toughness. It can change any combat, and it was one of the mythic commons of the original set. So
for sure,
of course, the power level was way too high, and so it's very distinctive. It's very hard to put it in a balanced environment, so it was excluded. But by changing the +1/+2 to +1/+1, the card is about right and can come into the fold.
Yeah.
In this case, it probably doesn't make the card more like itself. It probably makes it less like itself, but it makes the overall cube more like the original set because you can include cards like this.
That is one that I didn't include in my version of the Kamigawa block just because of that power level.
Yep.
When I was working on that list originally, Magic Online used to rotate flashback drafts every week, and I knocked out like 6 or 7 just original Kamigawa block drafts. Kabuto Moth was just so busted, so powerful, especially for a common. You get a couple of those in your deck, and you feel like you can't lose. Well, you can't lose to anything short of like a Moloku, anything short of a Super Moth.
I think I've got one last errata I definitely wanted to hit.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's the errata mechanic.
Yeah.
So Zozu the Punisher, this was an Aki. This was a goblin in the original set. It has, whenever a land enters the battlefield, Zozu the Punisher deals 2 damage to that land's controller. Oh, I'm sorry, this is a 3 mana card, 2 of which is red for a 2/2 legendary goblin warrior.
Yeah.
So Zozu the Punisher is a hate card, so it's not something I would normally include.
Yeah.
But what am I trying to do with the play experience? I'm trying not just to make the best game, but also interact with this original set in an interesting way. So this was a nice opportunity to make a errata that brings back mana burn on this rare.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Some cards from back then. One of the reasons Kamigawa looks so strange is not only that it is strange, but that the rules have changed since then. So there's this wonderful card called Reverse the Sands from the original Champions set. So Reverse the Sands is like an 8 mana sorcery, 2 of which is white, that redistributes any number of players' life totals.
Yeah.
And so back in the day, you would sort of tap all your lands to mana burn yourself down to 1, and then swap your life total with the opponent, and then So it's very hard to see how you could cast. I puzzled over this thing for a while. Why is this 8 mana? So, yes, the original context, the designs had mana burn. So the errata for Zozu the Punisher, this is one of those errata that just replaces the text box. I want to keep the spirit of the original card, so I do want to deal damage to players somehow. Mana burn is good for that. The card now reads: unspent mana causes mana burn. Whenever you cast a red spell, put a charge counter on Zozu the Punisher, and it has tap, remove X charge counters, each player adds X red mana.
Oh, okay. So,
So you add mana to both players and burn your opponent that way.
You build up some red. You cast red spell, get 3 charge counters. Then you tap this, remove those 3 charge counters. Each player gets 3 red mana. You do this when your opponent doesn't have a mana sink of some kind, so that they then also take 3 damage, and you get 3 mana to go do something cool.
That's right. And so it's a long game. This is one of your long game strategies, is to play this and wait. The errata mechanic now. If you're messing with the original block, I could easily imagine you take Ikoria block. If I was doing the same thing with Ikoria, you probably undo the fix to companion. You would want to errata mechanics again to make it what it was supposed to be during the design without worrying about constructed. The mechanic channel, you can see how they got there from Arcane. So with Arcane spells, you can take the essence of it and put it onto another card, right?
Yes.
So
okay.
Channel appeared on some spirits, and channel is an ability word. An example of a channel card is Shinnon of Flight's Wings. It's a 5 mana, one of which is blue, for a 3/3 flyer spirit. It has channel, Pay blue, discard Shinin of Flight's Wings. Target creature gets flying until end of turn.
Yeah, so 5 mana, 3/3 flyer, which is like not the worst card you could play in this cube. But then the channel ability is really minor. I'm going to throw away my card just to get flying once. Pretty unlikely to do that.
This is a questionable design, that's right. They did bring back channel in Neo in the version of Kamigawa thousands of years later. But for spirits, I can see what they were doing.
Yeah.
Take the essence of Shinin of the Flight's Wings and put it onto a card.
Splice onto creature this flying ability.
So trying to make the mechanic more like the role it's playing here was one of my goals in errataing it. Another one was the fact that ninjutsu in the block has very little support or interaction, actually. So when they first made that mechanic, they didn't really know what they were doing. Like you did something with the card and you got something back to your hand. So in some sense, it interacts with the cards in hand theme, but not really. I mean, you're static on cards in hand. So where I took channel is changing it to what I call channel mutate. So did you get a chance to take a look at this, Tim?
I did, but I'm gonna ride this along with the listeners and hear you explain it though.
So channel mutate, if I look at that card Shinin of Flight's Wings, so the channel for a blue is replaced by channel mutate for a blue. Channel mutate, the flavor text, the reminder text reads, mutate under target spirit you control for blue as an instant.
Okay, so I have the effect of giving flying to a spirit permanently, or like aura permanently.
Yeah. Now, okay, so it only works on spirits, which is a little cute because this adds to this parasitic nature and the the draft environment. Like I said, you want people to be drawn towards the spirit and arcane world as which is pulling them and it achieves that. Channel itself is not something I was super fond of because it's just so broad. So you discard a card and do something. Like it's fine for an ability word, but as a mechanic, it's a little bit broad, and we have a little bit of freedom here to do something wacky. So I was
channel mutate.
I really wasn't thinking I would do this because I didn't want to replace the word channel with something else entirely, taking a big departure. But channel mutate. So the idea would be it can only mutate under a target spirit you control. So it behaves very similarly to channel, which is you discard this card for a single blue, and it goes underneath that creature.
Yeah.
The differences, though, are, well, if you ninjutsu, then you return both cards back to your hand.
Oh, okay.
So you didn't lose the Shinin in that case.
All right.
The other interaction is it engages with the soul shift mechanic in a the channel does, but it's kind of interesting that you have to actually have the creature die then for it to be in your graveyard for you to get it back with soul shift.
Yeah.
I didn't want to overcomplicate this. I only used the cycle of Shinin cards.
Yeah.
Another example is Shinin of Fierce Chill. The original card is a 5 mana, one of which is black, creature spirit 3/2, which has Shinin of Fierce Chill can't block. And channel 1 and a black, discard Shinin of Fierce Chill, target creature can't block this turn. The errated version, the text box is replaced in this case by so still a 5 mana 3/2 spirit, but it has a menace, it has soul shift 4, and it has channel mutate for a single black. Like the blue card, this is evasive. So the idea is you'd be encouraged to do this before blockers are declared, just like if you're grinding something flying. Evasive is interesting with ninjutsu. But when you channel or mutate this onto a spirit, so you grant it menace, but you'd also grant it soul shift 4.
Yeah, that seems good.
So you'd actually use this kind of a lot more readily. The original channel cards like this, a lot of the value was in playing them as a creature. Whereas here you can grant a creature soul shift 4 instant speed, so you might intend to have that die immediately.
Okay, so it's a little combat trick, almost kind of like the cards that are like when the creature dies, draw a card, a combat trick where, I get to get a little bit of value as my creature dies. And it also can just be a menace thing instead. I was thinking with like the blue Shinin, that almost feels like put a flying counter on target spirit. like ability
Yes.
counters. But it's maybe not flexible enough for things like this Shinin, where I want to both give Menace, which could be a counter, or Soul Shift, which I probably don't want to make a counter.
Mhm. Merging permanence
Yeah.
is quite nice for tracking the cards. You don't need an extra counter. You put it underneath, and you have the
Yeah.
essence of the
Okay.
original creature on this new creature.
Yeah. I can believe it. Yeah.
I don't think Channel Mutate is for everyone, or that they should print this. I'm sure they'll do more with merging permanence. That's not just simply mutating. One day, Magic eventually does everything given infinite time.
Yeah. Like Shinin are sort of like the essence of some idea. The like, I don't know. I'm just my amateur reading of
Yes.
looking at the kanji here. This is sort of like thought, or like to think
Ah,
something, or an idea or something like that is what the kanji for Shinin are telling me.
right.
I'm not a
Yeah.
native Japanese speaker,
Me
but
neither.
it's sort of this as ephemeral as you can get in terms of spirits, like the essence of flight or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I did originally have this ability. It was mutating under anything, or you could go for a non-human.
Hmm.
But the idea of the spirits composing the cards together to make something ephemeral is what we're going for.
Yeah, working with Splice flavor wise really makes sense
Yeah,
to me.
there is a flip card just as we finish on this topic that wants the game flying. So, do you remember that guy that wants the game
Oh,
flying and then flips?
does it like then give everything flying or something?
That's right. So the card is Student
Yeah.
of Elements, 2 mana, one of which is blue for a 1/1 creature, human wizard. When Student of Elements has flying, flip it. It flips into a 3/3 that says creatures you control have flying. The,
Oh, okay.
the flip designs are nice. They have sometimes really strong stuff on the backside, but you have to complete a quest to get there. So
Yeah.
being a human wizard, you can't channel mutate onto this creature.
Oh
So,
no.
but you
Tragic.
can if you figure out how to make him a spirit. You could, right?
Is that possible?
In the cube, yeah, in the
Oh,
environment.
okay. I got really excited, then really sad. Alrighty. We've nerfed Shinnin to Flight Swings for in terms of Student of the Elements. He's like, he's on
Yes.
Reddit right now complaining that his combo doesn't work anymore. All right, yeah. Yeah, these Shinnin are pretty cool. Did you do all 5 of them, it looks like, or maybe 4 out of 5, something like that?
Like with most cycles, just 3 or 4 that were the
The cool
most
ones, yeah.
effective of the original designs.
Fair enough, fair enough. I wanna learn more. I wanna know more about these errata attempts. I would
Mhm,
say personally, a couple of these are in like kind of a weird zone, but
mhm.
that's true for any design where, like some of this is gonna really land for you. Some of it you're gonna be like, did we need to do this? And that's not meant as shade. That's meant as this is
Yes.
exciting. I want to know more about this. I want this to be experimented more.
Yes, once you start doing one errata, you're pulled into doing more and more,
Exactly. Yeah.
into
Yeah.
the spirit realm further and further.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you do have to keep a lid on it. Sometimes in design of environments, or cubes, sometimes there's a decision where you make it and it's hard to really go back.
Hmm.
I know both you and I, Tim, work with software, so
Yeah.
one of the nice features about software is you can like save the state of it as you keep
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
So you can go back and you can fork it, or you can go back and fish something out that
Yeah.
you did earlier.
Yeah.
For creative projects, I think Git would probably be a helpful system that we should use for more than just code.
Hmm.
But if I have lots of Keep Cobra links that are all slightly different, then that's also a headache.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Like the historical drafts on Cube
Yep.
Cobra, like the cards have changed since that draft happened, but there's nothing recording that change. There's nothing. Yeah.
Yep,
Interesting.
that's right. This happens on Magic Arena when I do play. The only constructed I play is Brawl,
Oh,
historic
okay.
Brawl on
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have a concept for a deck. One thing you might do is have decks with no creatures because that blanks your opponent's removal.
Oh, okay.
Um, right. So if you have a control deck with just one creature that has some hexproof as your commander and no other creatures, the deck works well when you stick to having near zero creatures. And if you
Hmm.
start to add a few, you're going in a different direction. You're sort of forking the deck.
Yeah.
And so at those moments, you would usually like clone it and then start a new one. Sorry, and so you don't have to have just one copy of the deck. You're like
Yeah.
You're like, here's the version where I take this fork in the road, and here's the version where I do the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
So too with designs.
Yeah. What do you think is like if you were either gonna errata another card that's in here or undo an errata that you currently have? Either of those in mind?
The most obvious way to control errata is to control the number of them. I think you're looking for what is the number that people feel like there's too much text to read or too much errata, or what are the few that stick out as being the most unnecessary?
Yeah, something like that.
You could peel off. So, anti-avalanches, like, do I need to give it trample? Not really, for the quality of the gameplay.
Oh, okay.
What are the ones that I'm not sure about? So, one example of where I'd be happy to peel the sticker off would be we use Ominous Seas in this cube.
Oh, okay.
It plays into the time, the long games theme. So Ominous Seas, if you don't remember from my courier, is 2 mana, one of which is blue for an enchantment. Whenever you draw a card, put a foreshadow counter on Ominous Seas. Remove 8 foreshadow counters from Ominous Seas. Create an 8/8 blue Kraken creature token, and it has cycling too. So the errata is the Kraken tokens are 6/6.
Okay. Bring it into the same level.
It. Yeah. So, but it's fine. You can play with it being an 8/8. It might be more fun that way when it does happen. But if you wanted to really tune the numbers to make the gameplay ideal, then you put it down to a smaller power toughness.
Yeah. I think the cards that are not only like reprints or whatever you want to call those, and also power level errata, maybe that's like a funny zone to be in.
That's right.
Yeah. Like you have some errata, like you've got this marked by honor, which is just like an aura to pump your creatures. And then you also have an errata, hey, also make it a samurai. Well, that I think makes sense. Bringing it outside the set thing, give it a thing to make it plug into the set a little bit better. But if we're bringing a card in and then just nerfing it, let's just find a different card.
Yeah, I totally think that's a good path too.
But I also feel the temptation too. I understand the feeling of like, oh, I wanted a specific thing that I want to bring in.
It depends what you want. That's right. I want to play with my friends and have the card be this way.
Yeah.
My group, we enjoy going deep on how the card should work.
I guess as we're finishing up here today, one of the things I'm sort of reflecting on looking at this process is like how I would apply that to some of the things that I've worked on myself. And I make a lot of these kind of like set cubes. I've made a Mirrodin one, an Innistrad, Odyssey, Kamigawa, as we talked about. I guess I'm trying to think like, am I ready to try out this errata technology? Is this something that I want to use? Is this something that some of the listeners might want to use? I'm trying to think of like what my version or what my heuristic or limitations I would put on errata. I think the ones that I like the most are where multiple cards get a similar errata. I think one of the ones that I liked the most was the Orochi one. We're going to change all the Orochi cards that have this like tap venom to all work the same way and also be a little bit better so that the mechanic functions. The Shinin, I think, are in that same category where it's like we're going to redo all of them to all work the same way and also become more useful.
I think that's right. I think you want to ask, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to explore with the project? What kind of experiences are you trying to create? Are you interested in how the mechanics work and individual cards?
Yeah.
And then when you fork off to the errata version, like even though you see a lot of errata in my cube, it still you have to be very conservative in the choices you make. And at some point, once you make enough errata, why not just do custom cards?
Yeah. I am seeing some of the value of errata here. I think the ones that I'm responding to best are where I'm shifting all these cards work differently now. Okay, cool. And it's right on the card, which is great. Sometimes the struggle can be like, hey, we're errataing all of the toxic cards in this cube into infect. That's something that I've seen where you have like cards from different sets have different keywords on them that work almost the same. Let's make them work the actual same within this cube, within this environment. But putting them on the card is actually quite nice. Like it's a good reminder. It's like more present. It's when you have to tell people a bunch of stuff before the draft starts that, that's not awful, but it adds a little bit.
There's a carrying capacity. You can't, every piece of information to people have time to internalize it and to listen to that.
Yeah. Just taking the time to get those stickers on those cards.
It does take time.
Yeah. Well, wearing custom magic, we know about taking time to do tedious things. That's like it's like part of the job requirement.
Yeah. One final piece of advice on errata is also about the cost of doing it is that people have to juggle these multiple versions of the card in their head.
Yeah.
So I would normally advise that you somehow find a way to make it feel like have an identity as the tweaked card. So for example, you might I know in Plane Sculptor's versions, it's harder to do this on paper cards, although you could still do it if you put something before the name, like a little symbol for your set. Put a symbol afterwards. People then think about the card as like, oh yes, this is Kabuto Moth, but in Arena they do a Kabuto Moth. If you change the name of the card, that's one way. Or if you have a little sticker on the left, so it's easy to see at a glance that it's the modified version.
Yeah, it's kind of nice in this kind of environment because people are mostly, even if they're familiar with Kamigawa, they probably don't remember the exact stat lines of cards. Whereas, like, I don't know,
Yes.
for me, like Throne of Eldraine card, I probably know most of the stats of all those cards, so I might not notice that it was errated, and I might be playing it wrong because I didn't notice that it was errated or something like that. So some sort of marker, yeah.
Being famous is part of the card's identity, right? So you can't just take Ancestral Recall and make it cost 2 mana. I mean, it's not Ancestral Recall anymore.
Yeah, that's a good example where I have played with cubes that do errata powerful cards to work differently, and that's another place that has been a little bit of friction for me. One thing that I did is I made a Rise the Eldrazi cube, and then I added, I think, about 20 new cards, a cycle of gold cards, and some other miscellaneous cards. And the thing that I ran into is that, like, there isn't much like art on the internet that looks like Rise the Eldrazi. So what I ended up doing is that I took cards from the Battle for Zendikar block and like flip their art or mess with the art in some way. But even then, like once in a while, most of those cards that I picked, I tried to pick ones that weren't famous. But even then, like the really entrenched people were like, no, this card looks, I thought this card was this, and I got confused. Oh, well, sorry, man. It is something that you run into trying to with these kinds of experiments. It's something that, like, I'm looking at your stickers that you've got here. I'm looking at these little purple stickers. I'm actually feeling good about it. They're like obvious. Hey, this is an errata card. The change, yeah. Sometimes I have to, look at the errata and look at the card and look at the errata and look at the card. But then I get it. And if I need to explain it, I feel like I'm fully ready to explain it. I'm not going to forget it. All that kind of stuff feels really good.
Right, we're just continuing to grow more and more knowledge about these sets over time as the years go by, and so we have to have finer ways to express and encode that knowledge of the technology we built.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, I think that's about it for the main part of our podcast. This was a cool discussion. I feel like I learned a whole lot. But before we get out of here, I want to remind people of the design challenge for June. We do these every month. People submit their cards. We talk about them on the podcast. And our design challenge for June is halfway there. Design a commander that has partner with and give it an existing ability word from Magic. So 2 things going on here. Partner with, that's the kind of partner where you name a specific other card. The twist on this challenge is that you're not actually submitting the other card. You're only submitting half of the partnership.
Okay, so I design a card and I say it partners with Vomit King, and then
yeah, that's what we're looking for here. The partnership, we have to imagine the partnership as we're going to be reviewing these cards later. We're going to be guessing, what the partner with might do. Some of these partner with cards, the cards on their own are not really functional without their partner. And you can go that route if you want to. You can have something that's more standalone. There were some like Battle Bond partners and like Ikoria partners where it's like a knight and a dragon are teaming up, and the knight buff dragons and the dragon buffs knights or something like that.
And just to clarify, Tim, are you allowed to name existing cards for you to partner with, or does it have to be?
Yeah, so you could do an existing character. We're not looking for you to partner with an existing full card. So this should be, so you could partner with a brand new Kenrith. You could partner with a brand new Jace, but don't partner with Jace the Mind Sculptor.
As much as you might want to.
The fundamental thing about design challenges is whatever card you submit, we're going to read it. I'm going to talk about the podcast. I'm having a good time with it. But if you'd like to obey the rules, which I would encourage you to do, that's where we're at. Then the other half of that challenge, real quick, is an existing ability word. These are the words that are like in italics, like channel. We talked about that earlier. These are not keywords. These are like, what are some other? Threshold was another ability word.
Undergrowth.
What was that?
It's Ravnica undergrowth. It's
Undergrowth, yeah.
creatures in your graveyard.
So we're looking for you to find one of those. There's a list of maybe about 50 of them. We got a link in the Discord to the whole thing. Ferocious, Enrage, Battalion. There's a lot of these. Delirium, Domain. There's a lot to choose from, but we just want you to pick one and put it on this card. As usual, we also have bonus points. My bonus point that I gave people was Flavor Blasted. Give us a quick flavor synopsis of the partners. So this is optional, but if you want to, you could tell us like, oh, they met on the field of battle and now they team up and are mercenaries. You could say whatever you want about them. And then Red Bay's bonus point going with halfway there. Well, we got the other part of the song. Whoa, living on a prayer. Give it some holy flavor. Angel, cleric, life gain, resurrection, prayer, all that kind of stuff. On a future episode, we're planning on designing the other half, live designing that, making that its own challenge. So give us a lot to work with there with this design challenge.
Please help Tim out.
Yeah.
I love listening to those Design League episodes and seeing how people react to the designs.
Yeah.
Are you still doing the thing? This idea you could include some spoiler text in your submission.
Yeah.
Because then
what are you thinking?
Only read the spoiler text on the air, and then again, unless it's offensive and so on, that's a way to have interesting interaction. Love it. All right, this was great fun. Thank you so much, Tim.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
I love the podcast. Great to participate.
That's the end of our show here. Anything you want to tell people about, where to find you, that kind of stuff?
I'm on Twitter, so I am at DanGMartin1. I'll probably put the Cube Cobra stickering code on GitHub at some point, but that's all I have for now.
Well, that's fun. Yeah. If you need to find me at Tim F. Riley. And thanks everyone for listening.
Goodbye.